Oh, hey, how you doing? Brandon. Brandon Hurd. I go by the moniker B Hurd. I'm actually a raw artist. I did a show for you guys back in February, the Cusp show. You know, there's a lot of things that went through my head when I was going ahead and trying to record this video. First thing I was going to do a monologue for you guys and do a couple of jokes. Yeah, you know, I was going to do a parody, you know, and try to make you guys laugh. But I think the most effective thing that I can do right now, right here, right now, is just be real with you guys. Being an artist that did a raw show, I know the dynamic of the show. I know how the artists feel when they're out there. They all have amazing work, but they're nervous and they feel that the world is going to judge them. And I understand that. I want to tell you about that dynamic night, that night that I did my show, and when I, B Hurd, fell in love with Raw Detroit. It was, the night was long. You know, we started at 7 o'clock and we ran all the way to midnight, all to the witching hour. And, you know, it was right before midnight. The host for that night, they called us up, you know, to the stage as a collective unit. All of the artists, there were about, you know, I think there were, you know, there were artists. There were fashion, hairstylists, fashion designers. So on stage there were about 60 to 70 people. And they told us all to take a collective bow in front of this crowd. And I remember being the tallest guy up there, being like 6'4" amongst a bunch of people like 5'11" and below. I felt like a giraffe in the wild. And I remember standing up there and looking out into that crowd and seeing the lights and seeing the people and seeing the excitement in their faces and hearing them, hearing that energy, that electric energy in that room, and saying that this isn't enough. This isn't enough. I remember looking at that host for that night, and it was so funny. I watched those amazing fashion shows that night, and I watched those amazing performances, the music performances that night, and I saw them running that runway, and I looked at that host that night, and I'm a silly guy. I looked at her and I said, "Can I walk that runway?" And she looked at me like, "Boy, if you don't go ahead and go with your bad self." And I took that moment and I strutted down that runway. And some things happened there. I was caught up in the electricity of that night, the moment, just the energy in that room. And I was scared. I was scared. I was scared that at that moment I was taking the show from my fellow artists. I was scared that the crowd was going to view me as a show taker. A show, you know, I'm hogging the show. I was scared hell that I was going to bust my ass and fall off of that stage. It would be a good laugh, but that would be embarrassing for me. But I'll tell you what, at that moment, at that very moment, when I walked down that runway, at the end of the night, when it was time for the artists to take their bow and take credit for what they had exhibited that night, I started something. I started an additional energy. I took a collective moment for all of the artists on stage and turned it into an individual appreciation for each artist on that stage. I remember going to the edge of that runway and walking and being who I am. Energetic, silly, happy, wanting to make everybody smile around me. Turned around with the fear in my heart of all the things that I just said. I turned around and saw that whole panel of artists smiling at me, clapping, welcoming me back into them. And soon as I walked back, other artists took that runway. And each artist had an individual moment. Each artist, hairstylist, music performer had an individual moment in the spotlight to bask. That night was magical. It was a magical night. So from that night, I left. I tore down my panel, went home, and I just remember the love in that room. Each artist, not all of the artists, but most of the artists come up to me and they go, yo, that energy was needed. You know, and the love, I mean, everybody comes up, they're hugging me and telling me, like, you know, we needed that. I was so nervous. There was a show after that. After the Cusp show, I was contacted and I was asked, hey, you know, would you like to volunteer for another Raw show? Of course. I love Raw. Raw is the engine needed in Detroit to promote local talent. There's so much talent in Detroit that needs to be discovered. I'll volunteer in a heartbeat. So I volunteered, and I remember I was given my instructions. I was meant to kind of just look over, see if anybody needs anything. You know, just kind of a liaison for the artists and the performance that night. And I remember I was doing my rounds, you know, being active, walking around, asking, hey, do you need anything? Is there anything that I can do for you? And I went down into what's called the Shelter in St. Andrews Hall in Detroit, if you don't know. And I see this guy, he's on the stage, and he's just sitting there. And I could tell he was a dancer because he had on a dancing garb, and he had a little music playing in the background. I walk up to him, I say, hey man, you a performer tonight? He's like, yeah, I'm a performer. Man, you know, I know this is a big thing right now. I know this show is huge. This show is huge, you know, this Raw thing, but I can't do it. I'm nervous, I'm scared. I can't dance. And I looked at him and I said, man, you know, I've been walking around and I saw the guy in the basement dancing. And the guy was incredible. You know? And I look at him and I say, you can't dance? Bro, I've seen you. I've done my rounds and I've been walking through here and watching you dance. You have a gift. And that audience out there, they want to see it. They want to see what you can do. You have something that they don't have. You have a gift to share with the world. Share it. It's like, no, man, I'm scared, man. You know, I don't like performing in front of crowds. I don't like performing. I'm like, it's not about not liking it or, you know, your fear. Your fear is your doubt. Your doubt is invalid right now. You know, you have a talent. You made it. You're accepted by Raw. Go out there, man. Go out there and show them what you got. You know, and there were some other things that I had said, you know, and I had, you know, encouraged this young man to go out there and show him what he's got. And you know, his set wasn't, you know, for another. It was 2 more performances before him. So I walked off and I said, hey man, you know, go ahead and do whatever practice you've got to do, and I'll be back. And right before his set, I remember I came down there and I told him. I didn't even walk up all the way. You know, I walked up to him and I said, you got this. And he went out there and he killed it. I remember sitting on the side of the stage and watching this young man go out there and do things that I can't even imagine. This guy was so talented. And after the show, he pulls me aside and he says, bro, I couldn't have done it without you. I don't know who you are, but I'm glad that you were there at that very moment to coach me into doing what was necessary at that moment. This. Being an artist that was in a Raw show, I understand the pressure that each one of the performers has that night. There's a lot of pressure. These people are incredibly talented people. You know, that is without a doubt, these people are incredibly talented. But you have to keep in mind that these people are incredibly nervous, because I was when I did my show. Being that, I understand that it takes the extra push, the extra initiative from somebody within Raw to coach these people and get them ready for what they have to do. Anybody, anyone, you can get a homeless person off the street to come up in St. Andrews Hall and say, here's this guy, this girl, or this group to perform this act. Anybody can do that. But it takes somebody who's invested in Raw, who loves Raw, that can understand what these artists are going through as they prepare for their show, and incorporate that into their hosting mechanism, and make these people feel comfortable with going up on that stage and presenting and doing an amazing show. An amazing show is what's going to bring people back to Raw again and again and again and again. When these people get out here and they do their shows and they do them and they kick ass, because not only are they talented, not only do they have something that no one else possesses, but they have someone there that can present them that believes in them. Raw is unstoppable. You can't tell me it's not. So, hey, look, I'm be heard. I will be heard no matter what. That's my personality. That's who I am. And I love Raw. And right now, I'm about to go do some more paintings for the next show. See ya.